The Flash is the most beautiful mess I've ever seen in my life. Now, to be clear, I like the movie. I'm pretty conflicted on it. I would probably give it a thumbs up. Like, if I was talking to someone about it today, you would tell me if I would recommend it to someone or not. I would probably recommend it. Like, just barely recommend it to you. I saw it at a public early screening on Wednesday, and when I came out of that theater, I thought it was, I probably give it easily an 8 out of 10 when I first saw it, but now that I've had more time to think about it, it's sunk in more. It's a few days to think about the movie. My rating has dropped probably a couple notches. The Flash is basically just summed up as a bunch of really great ideas. Like the Flash's movie has a bunch of really, really great ideas that I really love. And ideas that I probably love a lot more than the execution of those ideas. Just a lot of times in this movie, there's several story points where I saw that and I went, I like that idea. That's a really good idea. And probably like my excitement for the movie and my liking of it is elevated more than what I actually saw on the screen, but what I could see the filmmakers were probably trying to go for, and the filmmakers were like what they were trying to get at, what they were grasping at, not exactly what I actually saw on the screen, just what I could tell that they were maybe trying to get at. And Andy Muschietti was really trying to do, but not what we actually got. I was kind of disappointed because you can see on my channel, I've made a video about how I thought The Flash was going to be really, really great, and I made a whole video talking about basically just the story of him going back in time to save his mom. Just that emotional core of the movie is something that's really special and something that could be really heartwarming. And that part of the movie that I talked about in that video, which you can go check that out on my channel if you haven't already, that part of the movie with Barry and his mom, very, very good stuff. The best parts of this movie, because this movie is definitely going to get compared to No Way Home with the nostalgia cameos. Michael Keaton Batman, Sasha Calle's Supergirl, like they're being brought in all these different cameos and stuff, like definitely easily going to be compared to No Way Home in terms of just the idea. But I think as a story, like as not just nostalgia bait and fan service, which is a term that I hate to use, which by the way, if you haven't checked out my video on fan service as a whole and my thoughts on it, you should definitely check that out because I love that video because it's just a topic that people talk about all the time nowadays, and it's not really discussed what exactly fan service is, so I would definitely recommend you check out that video if you haven't. The fan service aspects in No Way Home, they were probably handled better, but The Flash, like as an emotional core to it, like the actual storyline and its relation to our main character, how much it matters to them, how like invested the story is. The Flash probably has a stronger emotional center, I'd say, than No Way Home does. Because No Way Home, the setup is just, whoops, we tried to do a spell and it didn't really work because I didn't think this through at all. Neither did Doctor Strange, who is much more experienced and should be thinking about this stuff. Whoops, that didn't work. Now all these people are coming here. Oopsie daisy. They got brought back from before they died, even though some of them are about to go get sent back just to die anyway. There's a couple of plot holes in the setup, and it's not nearly as interesting as, well, my mom died, and I just figured out that I can go back in time, and there's a way that I can save my mom from dying. Should I do that? Would that be okay? That's a much more interesting, I think, and like real setup for the nostalgia stuff to occur than just whoopsies. We cast the spell wrong, which again, I love No Way Home. Great, fantastic movie, but there's a few plot holes in it. I always start out in these intros, like talking about the movie, and then I just go way off track. I have so many things to say about it. But we're going to go ahead and get started because I do always, as always, have 3 points to talk about when it comes to The Flash. And the first point is the Ezra Miller controversy. Should you separate the art from the artist? Second is the multiverse aspects of it, the cameos, the other worlds, the other realities, that kind of thing. Third is the actual story itself, what we're getting, the emotional core of this movie with Barry and his mom, most importantly, and some few other aspects as well. But yes, you guessed it, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen The Flash yet, you should probably go check it out before you watch this video. It's an interesting movie. It's a very interesting movie. It's an experience, I will say. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started with the Ezra Miller controversy. So it's something that you have to talk about when you talk about this movie. You can't talk about The Flash without mentioning Ezra Miller, who plays The Flash, and all of these crazy allegations, him being like on the run from the law at one point. He's done a lot of crazy stuff, and a lot of people are not going to see this movie. It opened with a $55 million opening weekend, which is not great in any way, shape, or form for a movie that cost $200 million to make. And these movies are very front-loaded. Like, they make a lot of their revenue in the first 2 weeks. Terrible. Very, very bad. And they said they're going to make a sequel to this only if it makes as much as the Batman did. And this did not make as much as the Batman did its opening weekend. So, It seems very unlikely that we'll get a Flash sequel, which is kind of unfortunate after the ending that this movie set up, which I still have no idea what it means. And it feels kind of disrespectful. But we'll talk about that, I guess, in a second. But the Ezra Miller controversy, I think a lot of people are not going to see the movie because of Ezra Miller. They decided that, well, he's basically a criminal. He's on the run from the law. He's committed a lot of crimes and felonies and done some very questionable things. So the fact that he is the main star and the face of this movie, and Warner Brothers is seemingly not caring about any of those allegations or bad press that Ezra Miller has been getting, I just don't really want to support a movie like that. And I totally get that. I think it's fine. I think that there's a lot of people who worked on The Flash. There's a lot of people, VFX artists, writers, director, production team, set, hair and makeup, costumes, all of these amazing people who've worked so hard to make this movie come to the big screen. And the fact that the main guy, unfortunately, happened to do a lot of crazy stuff, I don't think that means you should punish everyone on the crew for one man's mistake, but I very much do understand if, you decide to not watch the movie just because you don't want to support Ezra Miller. I totally get that. I think it's a very valid opinion to take. I understand your position completely. But, this does bring up a topic, can you really separate the art from the artist, right? Does Ezra Miller's behavior in real life really excuse the movie? Like, should you just not see the art that has been produced, not just by Ezra Miller, but by so many other people, because of the guy's bad behavior? And I think that nobody's perfect, right? So if everybody who makes stuff, art per se, because movies are art, if someone makes stuff, art, and their whole life is constantly being plastered, projected for everyone to see, and you let the artist determine whether or not you should see the art or appreciate the art, then I think a lot of people would be less interested in art very much, because a lot of people do a lot of crazy things. Everybody in their everyday life does bad stuff all the time, like even just little lies that you tell or even just other stuff. So everybody makes mistakes. Ezra Miller has made a lot of mistakes. And even with Ezra Miller, it's a different situation, right? Because it's not like these little things that if they were shown to the whole world, then people wouldn't like Ezra Miller. Ezra Miller's done stuff that's very public. He's been very rambunctious about these things that he's done, very public about these deeds that are against the law, literally against the law, that are very public. So a lot of people know about them. It's not just taking his private life and broadcasting it to everyone. This is very public, the stuff that he's done. So it is a different situation with Ezra Miller, but I think the idea of just everyone's life if everyone's life was broadcast to the world to see, everybody who creates art, I think a lot of people would be less interested in art. So for me, it's very easy to separate the art from the artist, because I know that whoever is making art is not a perfect person. They make mistakes all the time, every single day. For me, it's very easy to separate the art from the artist, because I can say, look at the art that is presented here, right? If this is something that is good and worthy of praising, creative, brilliant, wonderful, beautiful, just an amazing piece of art, it doesn't matter who the person who made it, what their life is like, all the mistakes they made, that kind of thing. So in The Flash, Ezra Miller, who plays the Flash, and he plays younger Barry, and he plays, at the end of the movie, Dark Flash, younger Barry who becomes a villain. He plays 3 different characters, essentially, in this movie, and I think his performance in the movie was very good. I think he very much did a great job, which is kind of crazy to think about, because he's, so in real life seems very mentally unstable with all the things he's done. In the movie, he does a very solid performance, and his quirkiness, his kind of offbeat, awkward, quirky nature, it really did work for me. And I think for this character of Barry Allen, this version of Barry Allen, he's funny, he's got comedic timing, it feels very natural, he does a great job acting as Barry Allen. This is really his main role that he's done that people know Ezra Miller for, is from playing Barry Allen in the Justice League movies. I think he really, I don't know what his acting range is. I don't know any other stuff he's been in. But this character, he plays extremely well. I really think he did a fantastic job in this movie playing Barry Allen. And it's very easy for me, in this instance, to separate the art from the artist. Because it doesn't matter what Ezra Miller's done in real life, although he's done some very bad things, and I understand that, and I'm not minimizing that. But for me, his performance in the movie, it was entertaining, it was good, it was enjoyable, it was funny. So, I mean, I have no problem saying, hey, I'm going to, pay some money to go see it in the theater. Actually, I didn't pay any money. I went to a free early screening, so never mind. I didn't pay them any money. But, I'm going to support this piece of art that has been made. If I'm not necessarily supporting the person or the people involved in making it, I don't know if I'd support them or all the things Ezra Miller has done, but the art is enjoyable. It was entertaining. I liked it. His performance was good. So I would say in a culture and society, I think it's very important to separate the art from the artist. And this is just a good example to say that because, again, I think his performance was great. And you may disagree with me down below in the comments, but be sure to comment down below what your thoughts on The Flash were and your thoughts on what I said in this video, all that great stuff. You can disagree with that. I don't know if you guys like the Ezra Miller's performance or not, but for me, I think he did a great job. So I can separate the art from the artist.
Want some help?
You are?
Yeah. I'm Batman.
So moving on to our second point, let's talk about the multiverse and nostalgia bits. Now, for me, I would like to give some background. I have not seen Michael Keaton's Batman movies, so I don't have any connection to the nostalgia bits. There might have been some other specialness to seeing Michael Keaton on the big screen that I didn't quite feel. So maybe that was a piece of the movie that I was missing. Maybe why I didn't like it as much. But I do think the multiverse aspects were handled well because, again, as I talked about in my fan service video, the aspects of nostalgia, fan service, that kind of thing, if it's woven into the actual story, which it is, then it's good because Barry Allen going back in time, changing the timeline to save his mom, causes a rupture in the timeline, and as Michael Keaton explains with his spaghetti principle, when he goes back in time, he creates a separate, totally new reality with a new past, new present, new future, completely different. He just created an alternate reality, completely different from ours that exists alongside ours, but this one is destined to die because the whole story with Barry and his mom is destined to be, and that world is just going to fade away. That aspect is a direct result of our main story. It's not like we just had a half-baked, not really thought through idea so we can introduce these characters and just rely heavily on the nostalgia and the characters coming back in order to carry the story so then we don't have to have an actual storyline. Because this movie does have an actual storyline. It does have an emotional core to it. It has a character that we can relate to, a character that we can get behind, and he makes choices that are interesting, and he sets himself on a journey of self-discovery and a journey to improve, to grow, and have a character arc as a character, and to make choices and learn lessons. And these multiverse aspects are a direct correlation to that. And something that I wasn't expecting, something that surprised me, not really nostalgia or, fan service in any way, but Sasha Calle as Supergirl was a very pleasant surprise. I didn't actually have any expectations for Sasha Calle as Supergirl, just because I had never seen her in anything before. I had no idea what her acting is like or anything else that she's done. So I didn't really have any expectations as to whether or not she was going to be good or bad. And Supergirl as a character, like having to act in the face of Henry Cavill, who was our last Superman, who I know was a touchy subject for a lot of people that he was recast and not brought back. So I didn't have any expectations. I didn't know what to expect from Sasha Calle, but I was very interested to see what her storyline would be, and she pleasantly surprised me with her acting. She played the character very well. The character was very well written. I really liked Supergirl as a character in this movie. She fit in very well, and as a character, she really worked for me. And the idea of her storyline was kind of cool, which again, her idea of her storyline was better than the execution, I'd say, because when we find out that Clark is dead and Supergirl's cousin Clark, who she loves very much, is dead, was killed by Zod because they were trying to experiment to get his blood to move Krypton's inhabitants to Earth. I guess it was their plan. When she finds out that Clark died, that emotional plot line I didn't connect there because Supergirl was introduced like halfway through the movie. So these emotional moments where like something happens that directly affects her as a character, I wasn't really invested in her character all that much yet because she hadn't been on screen for enough time for me to get invested in her character. I really liked her. All that I did see, I wish we got more of Supergirl in this movie, and I wish we would have seen more, but it just felt like the ideas they presented of, that storyline where Clark gets killed and then she gets upset about that, it's not a big deal to me, but I don't know. It just feels like we could have had more time, or I wish we had more time to flesh that out. I wish we would have had more time to spend with Supergirl to kind of learn her personality a little bit more, just more of who she is. I think I would have liked to see more time spent with Supergirl in this movie, but we just didn't get enough of that, I feel like. So the idea of her being introduced I thought was cool, but the actual execution of that is, I don't know, not amazing. Michael Keaton, I thought was great to see him as Batman. His scenes were very cool. His action scenes were very cool. I love seeing Michael Keaton. He's a fun actor. He's a fun guy. He does performances very well. And his storyline is very much integrated into the plot. When this idea that when Barry goes back in time and he has to try to find other Justice League members, and he doesn't find any except for Batman because he has traveled to Michael Keaton Batman's world. It was just fun to see him on screen. He did a great job. His acting scenes were very cool. It was integrated into the plot. The plot, Flash going back in time, saving his mother, going to this other universe. It makes sense for Michael Keaton to be there, and his integration into the story, he was a necessary character. I thought it was interesting because they, for whatever reason, decided not to do a direct adaptation of Flashpoint and just change it for the DCEU. For whatever reason, I don't know why they didn't just do Flashpoint story. Would have been much better. I don't know why they had to change things. They changed the most interesting parts of the story. We'll talk about that in a second. But the fact that they decided to do Michael Keaton and replace him in the Thomas Wayne role, essentially, I thought was very good. I thought it was clever the way they decided to do that. Instead of having it be Thomas Wayne from a different universe, they just brought back Michael Keaton. I think that was a good, clever spin on the Flashpoint story. I like that. I thought it was a clever twist. I like the Supergirl twist as well. Instead of Superman being there, it's Supergirl. It's kind of a cool twist. I liked it. And they think it's Clark the whole time, and then when they find her, it's actually Supergirl. I thought that was cool. I thought it was the cool way of doing it. So the multiverse aspects, they directly relate to the story. They don't overshadow our main emotional current of Barry really wanting to save his mom, and then just these are side parts to that main story. So this is a good example of, I guess, quote unquote, fan service done right, to where it enhances the story. It makes it interesting. It makes it cool. It puts a fresh spin on our Flashpoint story. I liked that. I thought it was very well handled. The multiverse aspects, very cool. I liked it. I thought it worked. But moving on to our third point, and what I really want to talk about, this really kind of encapsulates everything else, these previous 2 points.
Time has a pattern that it can't help reliving. Different people, different worlds, drawn to each other like magnets.
This is the most beautiful mess I've ever seen. It really is true. It's a mess. It kind of is. But there's a lot of, again, ideas that I really, really liked. I love a lot of the ideas in this movie, much better than the execution. So something you have to talk about. The CGI, right? I thought the CGI, awful, inexcusable, embarrassing. $200 million were put into this movie, and I don't see hardly any of it. It looks pretty bad. It's not I hate the Speed Force, by the way. So instead of just the Flash running super fast and he enters the Speed Force as he's running, and then he comes out of the Speed Force whatever time he wants to be in, instead of it being that, it's like he gets into a hamster ball and he starts running, and he goes into this arena of sorts where you can see all of these different moments in time. It was just weird, stupid. It was not an interesting way to visualize the Speed Force. I didn't think it was a necessary way to visualize the Speed Force. Weird. And throughout the movie, the entire thing, awful CGI. It's a shame that we're getting this in 2023. It really is. But the beginning of this movie, it kicks off with a sequence that I really enjoyed because it's kind of a glimpse into what the DCEU could have been, what Snyder kind of was trying to set up, and just the idea of this, we get this smaller event where the Justice League is just kind of offhandedly stopping a random smaller crime before we go off on our big adventure. I really liked that, seeing Ben Affleck interacting with Barry Allen, and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman even too. It was just fun. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really, really fun to see the Justice League just stopping a smaller crime before we go off on our big adventure. And again, something I would like to mention, this movie is very funny. I was not expecting that. In the sense that just there's jokes, or has a lighter tone to it. Not just that, I was expecting that, obviously. Funny as in there were actually solid jokes in the movie. It wasn't like recent Marvel movies as of late, MCU films that are just kind of the most generic, bland, half-baked, painfully unfunny jokes that are completely tone deaf as to when is an emotional moment and when is a funny moment, and just undercuts all of these serious, emotional, dramatic moments with just jokes all the time, right? To where it's so annoying, so painful to watch. This movie actually had some funny, decent, well-written jokes, in my opinion. I found myself laughing quite a few times. And I do think that there was a nice balance of jokes and plot and emotion. I think they did a very good job of knowing when to make a joke and knowing when to hold back and have an emotional moment, especially with scenes where Barry is reminiscing about his mom, or close to the end where he's with his mom in the grocery store, which is the scene that got me kind of emotional in the theater. There weren't any jokes in there. It was just a really emotional scene. They took a step back and said, we're going to make this scene intimate and emotional, and we're really going to focus on the dramaticness of this scene. I really liked the humor in this movie. I thought it was fun. Again, Ezra Miller as an actor did a great job with the comedic moments. And, you got to talk about younger Flash. Can he be a bit overbearing sometimes? Yeah, but obviously, that's a part of the story. But it works to the film's benefit, and I think he did a good job playing him. So what are the ideas that I liked that weren't actually amazing? Well, especially when you get into the back half of the movie. For the first half of the movie, the first parts of this movie, it's really good, except for there's a huge criticism with this movie, because in the actual Flashpoint storyline, which if you don't know, this movie is based off a storyline from the comics called Flashpoint, where the Flash goes back in time, saves his mom, and then ruins the whole timeline, wrecks it, messes it up, and then it's revealed that the Reverse Flash is involved a lot because he's the Flash's arch nemesis. You can go look it up. It's a very great story. You can even watch, there's an animated movie about it that you can watch if you don't want to just read about it. That movie is probably much better than this one is at doing that story justice, because it's a great, fantastic story. It's really good. One of the most famous Flash storylines of all time. Probably the most famous. For whatever reason, this movie didn't have the guts to go for a Reverse Flash in any way. They just decided to make the villain Dark Flash, which is an adaptation of Dark Flash, not even Dark Flash exactly. So I thought it was a little weird. And it just doesn't make sense. It's not natural the way it plays out in this movie. Because in the comics, Reverse Flash is the one who kills Barry's mom. Because Reverse Flash, the Flash was his biggest hero. He was the Flash's biggest fan. And then he learns that he was destined to die by the hands of the Flash, fighting the Flash, because he becomes his nemesis. So then he goes back in time and makes Barry's childhood very traumatic and horrible. And then he caps it off by killing Barry's mom, which then sets in motion the events that caused Barry to become the Flash. So it's kind of like a paradox. Barry kind of created the Reverse Flash, and the Reverse Flash went back in time and created Barry. So they created each other. It's kind of like a paradox. It's kind of cool. I really like that idea, especially when you get into the topic of time travel and stuff. Just the way that works, I thought it was really cool. So for whatever reason, they just decided we're not going to cover the Reverse Flash at all. We're just not going to touch on that in any way, shape, or form. And it's just unnatural because, Barry knows that his dad didn't kill his mom. He knows that he didn't do it, but he doesn't know who did. So in the movie, it doesn't cross his mind at any point, or anyone's mind, not even his dad at any point, maybe we should look for the person who actually did kill his mom. Nobody mentions that in any way. That's unnatural. If someone in your family dies, you want to know who it is, because it's not your dad. Then you're going to want to know who actually killed her. It was in broad daylight. There were old people walking on the sidewalk at the time that she was killed. It's just unnatural to not say who did it. And it's just weird. Because they just, for whatever reason, decided we're not going to include the Reverse Flash. So we're just going to have to write around that and just leave it as this big gaping open hole in the story. Because if you've heard of the Flash in any way, you know that the Reverse Flash is his nemesis, and you know that he killed his mom. So for us as the viewers, watching the movie, we're just sitting there going, but we know it's the Reverse Flash who killed his mom, and they're just not touching on it at all. It's just weird. I just didn't like it. And the whole tomato soup thing, it doesn't make any sense. Since we know that Reverse Flash is the one who killed his mom, and if that's the way they're going in this movie, then his mom not forgetting the tomato soup doesn't make a difference, because his dad being there doesn't matter if his dad is there or not, because the Reverse Flash is still going to kill his mom. So it doesn't make any sense. And even in the movie, his dad gets home right after she dies. So she's basically he's in the driveway. He's there. So it doesn't just because his dad is there doesn't mean his mom doesn't still die. And I think that was stupid. I don't know why they did that, but they just used it as a plot device to get the story in motion, which I don't think it didn't bother me terribly. But the idea of having this moment that Barry goes back to where he can still have a conversation with his mom, like he does at the end of the movie, which is really great scene. Again, I got emotional in the theater. I was tearing up. It was a great idea, right? And the idea that really with the deeper themes and messages in this movie, the message of not focusing on the past, letting go of these bad events that happened to you, and focusing on all the good in your life. These really great themes and ideas in there that are executed pretty poorly because of all the reshoots and rewrites, and it's just right smack dab in the middle of this universe that is completely being reshifted. It's under completely new management right now. They're changing everything about the DC universe. It just got really caught up in the middle of this, which is unfortunate, because again, there's ideas in here that are really awesome. Ideas about love and loss and moving on and leaving behind your past and stopping focusing on the bad things in your life, and just these really cool messages. Batman says, our scars are what make us who we are. I love the ideas that they're focusing on this movie, but they just get wrapped up in some bad execution. When Barry does get back from Flashpoint and he resets everything, he comes back to the courthouse. It does turn around because on the security footage, it's enhanced by Wayne Tech to see that it is his dad is in the store and his dad is proven innocent, and that's great. And, some good finally turns up in Barry's life because he has friends that care about him. He has good things in his life. He's made so many great friends and he knows so many great people, and just so much good has happened in his life that he can choose to focus on, or he can choose to focus on the tragedy that's happened in his life, the things he's lost in his life. And when he chooses to focus on the people around him that really care about him and the good things that happen in his life, then good things happen for Barry. Because he has people that care about him. Bruce Wayne cares about him, and he uses Wayne Tech to help him out, and good things just turn around for Barry. By the end of this movie, he goes on a date with he plans a date with Iris. Things do look up because even though hard things and bad things do happen, the good things also happen as well. And whichever one you choose to focus on will define how well you live your life. So that stuff that's in this movie, if you really think about it, is awesome. I love that stuff. His interaction with his mom is awesome. I love those scenes, but they're wrapped up in a movie that's not awesome. At the end, once you get to the finale and the whole thing with Dark Flash, I really just didn't like. Like, all of a sudden, it's just like they're going back through time and just like killing Supergirl and Batman all over, like over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, Dark Flash is there. And they kind of adapted the idea from Flashpoint that Reverse Flash created Flash, so then Flash created him. Except it's like Dark Flash went back in time to make sure that Barry created him so that he could go back in time, and it's like a paradox, like a loop. They kind of did the same idea, except not just like with the creation of the person, just with certain events. But then it's so anticlimactic. Like, he dies by just stabbing himself randomly, and they just use it as an excuse to show Christopher Reeve's head badly CGI'd onto a stunt double. I just didn't like it, and I don't feel like it served like that idea in there of this younger Barry who gets powers now because of this other Barry from another universe, who he gets powers now. He has the powers of the Flash, and he has his own suit now. And he's really bonding with this Barry that he just recently learned is only there so he can save his mom. Like, the only reason he exists is because Barry went back in time and changed the timeline. The fact that he wants to, because he's lived his whole life up to this point. Now he finds out that he's just like destined to just go disappear and go away. And the idea that like he just goes all constantly throughout the multiverse back in time over and over again to try to right this wrong and stuff, like, that's an interesting plot. That's an interesting premise for a villain, and there's an emotional connection to Barry there. So that would have worked, but just the execution was weird. I didn't like it. And like, he dies just because he happens to get in the way of himself stabbing Barry, like, and that's just how he dies. Like, I don't know. It was an interesting idea that they just resolved really quickly and just didn't really think about it. It's not an idea that really suits the main premise of letting go and letting go of the past. I don't think it really serves that in any way. It was just weird. I don't know. It's obviously like when you get to the end of this movie, by the time you get to the end of it, you're not really thinking about the story anymore. You're just thinking about, was this what was originally supposed to happen, or was this reshot and changed in the editing room? Like, that's all you're thinking about. And I don't think that's a good thing to be thinking about in a movie. Just because it had so many reshoots, so many rewrites, so many things were changed, obviously. You're not even focusing on the story, you're just focusing on, was this changed, or was this originally supposed to happen? It's full of ideas that I love. Like, there's so many great ideas that they introduce, but they either like wrap them up really quickly and resolve them and then move on, or they just aren't as great as they seem. It's sad. It's sad because I really wanted to love this movie. I wanted to love The Flash. But it really is just a jumbled mess. Just a bunch of studio rewrites and changes in plans in the universe and that kind of thing. And just the ending. Oh, man, the ending. George Clooney walks out of the limo and it's like he's not Ben Affleck. And then that post-credit scene with Jason Momoa. Come on. What is that? What does that even mean? This movie's supposed to reset the DC universe, and all it did was just undercut it for a joke, which is exactly what Marvel movies do. Which I just praised this movie for not doing, and yet it did it in the post-credit scene. Once you get to the third act of this movie, there's just a lot of stuff that just doesn't add up. There's a lot of plot holes, especially with the tomato soup thing, or the fact that they don't even investigate who. Because it really, in a certain way, that whole looking for the person who killed Barry's mom, it doesn't suit the story of, letting go of your past and moving on with your life, focusing on the now and the present, looking to the future, and, just living your life. really doesn't serve that message. Like, you could argue it doesn't fit in this movie. Like, the whole point of it is, it doesn't matter who killed Barry's mom. It could be Barry's dad. It could be someone else. The fact that his mom died and that a tragedy happened in Barry's life, the fact that him not letting it define him, it doesn't matter who killed her. You know, he's just got to move on. And, you know, let that mold him, let that tragedy make him who he is today, but not let it define him, let it make him better as a person, but not let it consume him. It doesn't matter who killed her. So that you could argue that's not point of the message, which I get. But again, it's not rational. It's not natural for a human being. If your mom dies, you're going to want to find out who did it. And since you know it wasn't your dad for 100% certainty. So, I don't know. Just weird. Like, it's just because they just did not want to touch Reverse Flash at all. And there's things to love about this movie. Again, very entertaining. The soundtrack's pretty great. I've been listening to the soundtrack recently. The acting is great. There's no bad performance in this movie. But it's just the ending is really, it goes off the rails for me. I get what they were trying to do, and the idea of Dark Flash is interesting, but they just fumbled the bag on the execution. And I don't even know if that's mostly the filmmakers' fault, or if it's just the reshoots and the rewrites and the changes in the plans for the universe and all these changes that they had to make post, original script. So if the movie was originally what Andy Muschietti was envisioning, would it have been? This movie was announced by the time Grant Gustin, around the time he was cast in the Flash TV show, and it's now finally come out after the Flash TV show has ended. Like, a TV show of the Flash got 7 seasons in the time for it to get the movie out. This is the first ever Flash theatrical movie. And it's about, like, the reviews are saying, I love Michael Keaton Batman. Like, it's a Flash movie. Shouldn't it be about the Flash? It's just this big multiverse thing. So I liked aspects of this movie. And I liked aspects of this movie more than I actually liked this movie. I liked ideas more than I liked the actual way they are presented in the movie. So it makes me want to love the movie more. But then again, the stuff that I'm actually seeing on the screen is unimpressive. Which is sad. It really is, because I really want to love this movie. But I think it's just hurt by all the changes in the schedule and the universe and that kind of thing. I think it really did hurt the film, and it's sad. But there are things to like about this movie, and there are ideas and messages in here that I really do love. Really powerful stuff here. It's just packaged in a non-awesome and powerful way, and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is. I guess that's all my thoughts on The Flash. So if you enjoyed this video, I would very much like it if you would like this video and comment down below all your thoughts on The Flash. What did you think about the movie? Did you like it or dislike it? Maybe we can discuss, and I can get a better opinion if my opinion stinks, according to you, down in the comments, all that great stuff. If you want to watch my first Flash video, you can click right here on my face, and I would love it if you'd subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye.